Hi, I'm Dave from November Bicycles. Welcome to our shop. Today we're going to be doing part one of the Build with November series. I'm going to lace a Head Belgium Plus rim to an Industry 9 Torch Road front hub. I'm going to do it radially. It's a very basic build. Great wheel, one of our favorites, but this will give a simple introduction to the concept of lacing and putting the spokes into the hub and then connecting them with the rim. We'll get into just basically getting it tight, and we'll go through some of the tools and techniques that we do to get it to that stage, and then in the next one we'll tighten it up and get it true and ready to send out. So here you see the table I use to put things together. I sit on this stool and I have my parts laid out here. First thing is the spoke holder. It's pretty critical to keep the spokes from each side of the wheel separated. On a front road wheel rim brake, we're going to use the same length spokes left and right side. On any other kind of a wheel, we're going to have different lengths of spoke on the left and right side. So it's important to keep them separated because otherwise it'll get all screwed up. And this is just a simple thing I made when I took a welding class. You can use anything. You can use 2 cups, but keep your spokes separated. Then we have this neato Wheel Fanatic spoke shuffler here. And what this does is it presents the the nipples, so where you can just pick them up super quickly. And I use some of these spike dealies just to stab the backside of the spoke and pick it up, and that makes it super easy. The one in my hand is one I made. These ones are called mole finger tools and they're pretty readily available. Same thing, the longer one is obviously for deeper rims, the shorter one is for shallower rims. At the nipples, we coat them with this super lube stuff, and that's both to make it lower friction when we're turning the nipples in the rims, especially as you get towards higher spoke tensions. You can get some stiction there, and then the grease also protects the nipple through the life of the wheel. You get road grime and water and whatever else, salt in there. It can really do a number corroding the nipples, so we like to keep them as coated as possible. And then we use simply vegetable oil to coat the spoke threads, and I just dip them in like that. This is 2 spokes, and that again it lets the threads of the nipple interact more easily with the threads on the spokes. Things go together nicer. The less friction that you have in all these interfaces, the easier it's going to be to put things together accurately. So going back to the spokes for a second, we have 278 millimeter spokes here, and we're going to use those because this is a symmetrical build, meaning that there's no dish. The hub sits in the middle of the rim. Wheels get complicated. So the way you figure out spoke length is you use a spoke length calculator, and there are a million of them online. We use Spoke Calc. We use the Quality Bike Parts has one that you won't have access to as a consumer. But there are a ton out there, and they're all going to give relatively accurate measurements, as long as your input measurements are good. We're using this Head Belgium Plus rim here, which, as mentioned, one of our favorite rims. This has an ERD, or effective rim diameter, of 592 millimeters. And then we're using the Industry 9 Torch Road hub. And the critical measurements here are the flange distance, which is actually expressed in most calculators as a flange offset from the center. So on a rim brake front hub, this is going to be somewhere in the range of like 34, 35, 36 millimeters. And then what's called the pitch circle diameter, which is not actually the diameter of the flange itself. The pitch circle is the diameter between the holes, because the holes obviously can be inboard and outboard on the flange. So that's the two critical measurements that you need on the hub. When you put those in, you make sure that the spoke count in the hub is the same as the spoke count in the rim, and you go from there. And that will give you the right spoke lengths. For the sake of visibility, I'm going to show you with this lime green nipple here, but the goal of having good spoke length is that the nipple winds up covering all of the threads in the spoke, and the spoke winds up coming out just at the all the way through into that slot right there, which you probably can't see all that well. But if you have the spoke only going part way into the nipple, then the head of the nipple is unsupported, and particularly in an aluminum nipple, we've seen heads pop off. Unfortunately, not too often on our builds, but it does happen. And then the other problem is that, you know, eventually you run out of threads. So once you get to about that point, you can see the spoke is poking out of the top of the nipple. And, you know, if you ever needed to make an adjustment past there, obviously you're bottomed out. So you get, you know, a little bit of range out of this. It's not critical that you get to, you know, the 1/10 or a half of a millimeter. That level of precision doesn't do you any good. But you get about, you know, a millimeter and a half. And the dimensions of most of the spokes that you're going to use are kind of convoluted. They're 2.0 by 56 threads per inch. What that means is that the diameter is 2 millimeters, but the thread pitch is 56 threads per inch. Why they do it that way, I don't know. Somebody's told me that that's the world's most prevalent fastener size, which, when you think about the number of bicycle wheels that get built, no surprise. But yeah, it's weird. They have both measurements, so I can't explain it. I just deal with it. So that's that on spoke length. A couple of the other tools that we use, which are actually made by us here at the shop. This is a spoke hole prep tool, and this is actually a Dremel carving bit, I think they call it, which we attach this brass shaft to. With head rims, it's not particularly necessary to do this, but with some of the others, they don't drill their spoke holes as nicely as head does, and they leave, you know, some just schwank in the spoke hole. So you dip this into, you know, you take your electric drill and you just give a pulse at each spoke hole. This is not very sharp. You're not trying to gouge into the rim. You're not trying to expand the hole or anything like that. You're just kind of trying to clean up and chamfer the hole a little bit. And we do that on a lot of rims, but with heads we don't really do it. If you've read our blogs, you know the high regard we have for head aluminum rims. The other thing that we use is, after the wheel is all laced, we use this driver bit here, and that pointed end, this is just a flat blade screwdriver that we milled that point onto, and that point sits inside the spoke, and then when it sits inside the nipple, and then when the spoke goes down, threads into the nipple, eventually the end of the spoke will disengage this. The magic there is that allows us to start each spoke at the same rough length. So we can just count turns instead of doing any different kind of, looking at it, eyeballing where the threads are, anything like that. It makes it a lot easier and it saves a lot of time. So those are two tools that we made. If you're going to build one set of wheels, you don't need to do that, but if you're going to build several, it's pretty nice to do. It takes, a few minutes. It's not like really an involved piece of tooling to build. So, if you're going to find yourself building a lot of wheels, it's a nice thing to have on hand. One of the important things about putting a wheel together is that you get the spokes going the correct way. We actually have seen an unfortunate number of wheels that were put together with the spokes facing the wrong way. And what I mean when I say that is you've got the valve hole here, and this rim, you can see that the holes are center drilled, right? On several other rims, you've got these holes are offset, and that allows the spoke to angle toward the hub flange it's going to. The overwhelming majority of rims use the convention where you've got the valve hole here, and then as you're looking at that valve hole when it's away from you, the spoke hole to the left of that, or counterclockwise from that one, is going to go to the top of the flange, the top flange. And certainly my habit is that I always, in a center drilled or in majority of rims, I'm going to go that way just to hold that convention. It's something I check with every rim, but there's no rim that we normally use to that doesn't hold that convention, although they exist out there. So you'll want to check that every time, and you can double check that by looking at the way the spokes, if the spokes are offset, spoke holes are offset on the back side of the rim like this, then you know you have to double check that and make sure you're going the right way. Yeah, so that's that. And then the other thing that you'll notice is I'm wearing a smock, or whatever these things are called. Your pants will get hammered as you lace rims the way I do it. Some people use a stand. I don't, but you get black marks from the spokes all over your pants, and I don't like wrecking that many pairs of pants. So there you go on that. So let's just get to it. Since this is a radial laced front wheel, we're going to put half of the spokes into the hub and then put them right into the rim. We lace radial fronts with what's called heads out. This end of the spoke is the head end. This particular part of the spoke is the head itself. If you were going heads in, then you would go from the inside of the hub and lace it around this way. sorry, I think it's better there. It's kind of hard to hold like this. There. That has the advantage of giving a little extra bracing angle. It has the disadvantage of looking goofy. They all work. So this is the heads out convention that we use. And notice how nicely the angle in the spoke there lines up with the flange. That's, you know, a mark of a really nice flange. These flanges are also, you can't see it all that readily, but the flanges in i9 and most quality hubs out there, all quality hubs out there, are canted a little bit, which means that they go in a little bit just to follow the line of the spoke, so you don't have the spoke making an angle across the flange there. Okay, so here we go. And with so many of these things, there's no one right solution, right? This is all going to be about how we do it, how I do it, not necessarily that this is the absolute be-all, end-all, correct only way to do it. I don't think there is such a thing. So here we go. I'm just going to start at the hole that that I want to line up with the valve hole, and we'll go from there. So let's drop these suckers in, one after the other. And you know, you want to be pretty pro about this. You don't want to scratch the hub, and as we get to lacing them into the rim, you really want to avoid scratching the rim. It's easy to do. You know, I do this move a lot, all the time. So, you know, don't force anything. Just let them drop in like I'm doing here. I'll be good. All right, so now we've got, this is a 24 spoke wheel, so we've got 12 spokes dropping out. And we're kind of in a situation where we could pick either of these two spokes relative to the label. I think I'm going to go with this one. You know, they're not keyed up exactly precisely. So then I just poke the spoke through the rim there for the first one. And I stab a nipple. And I dip it in the goop. My little super lube stuff. So now I've got some grease on the nipple. And I just spin that baby on. And there it is. Alright. And then I'm going to go with every other hole. So I'm going to skip a hole in the rim and go to the next one. And the holes that I don't lace with this set of spokes are obviously going to be laced with the spokes from the other flange. So I'll just keep going here. Okay, so now we've got the first 12 spokes in. They're all in on the one side. And what we're going to do now is just simply flip the wheel. And then we're going to take our remaining 12 spokes and we're going to dip these into the oil. And then we're going to start firing these into the hub. Now you'll notice as you do this that the flanges, the holes on the flanges are clocked to each other so that one side, the holes on one side wind up exactly between the holes on the other side. That makes all the sense in the world when you think about it for a second. You don't want, you know, this spoke is winding up between these spokes, so therefore the flange hole that it comes from should be between the flange holes that the other two come from. And then we just start putting our prep nipples into this thing. Come on. So now, just as a gut check, that's about, through experience, I know that that's going to wind me up in about the right spot. I also know that I'm using the correct spoke lengths. So the next thing we're going to do is take the electric drill with the detented screwdriver head. And this just finds its way right onto the back of the nipple. And this, you'll see, will take the spokes to no longer loose but not yet tight, kind of. And more importantly, they will all be tensioned to the same exact degree, so I don't have to worry about finding a starting point when I tension the wheel. There are some commercial versions of this idea out there, and I'll show you one of them, and I'll tell you why I don't like it. Okay, here we are. So before I did that step, the hub was kind of flopping around. Now there's, and I dropped a nipple in there. You know, again, no longer loose, not yet tight. Valve hole is right here. Logo on the hub is right here. So as you're looking through the valve hole, you look right at the logo on the hub. Now, this, I forget who makes this, but this is a you know, an offset nipple driver, and you hand crank this thing on. Just gonna set that back to my level. The issue with this one is that if you look at it, the detent is tiny versus this one, okay? So when you tighten up all your spokes using one of these things, they're gonna be tight. And what I've found is that if you tighten, you know, sort of pre-tension the spokes that much, the spokes that you tighten earlier are gonna pull the hub toward that part of the rim. And then later ones you're gonna struggle, and this is gonna hop off, and they're not gonna get tightened all the way down. So so that starts off with the wheel not round. The wheel being round in a good rim, and the stiffer the rim, the more this is true. So in a carbon rim, it's incredibly true, or at least in most good carbon rims. the function of the wheel being round is dictated by the hub being in the middle of the rim. You're not egging the rim and manipulating the rim to bend it into position so that it's round. You're just trying to sight the hub in the middle of the rim. That's what makes the wheel round. So that is the wheel laced. Pretty easy process, doesn't take that long. Takes me a lot longer when I'm trying to talk into a camera. But that's where we'll get to today. And next time we'll put that wheel in the stand and we'll start to take it up to tension and get it ready to go.